welcome back to another episode of Sarver's RC. Today we got the Sledge out and we're going to be installing some springs on it. So usually I typically go with just stiffer Traxxas springs. As you can see, just standard coil, just stiffen the spring rate. So wanted to try something different and went with some VG racing springs. And these are progressive tune springs. And we're going to give these a try and see how the progressive works out. See if we want to start doing that going forward. So I just want to give a quick comparison on a progressive versus a standard spring. So this is a spring off my Max. I haven't gotten these off the Sledge yet. Maybe we can do a comparison during the install, but as you can see, like I pointed out, standard coil. With progressive spring, you have a tighter coil with a softer spring rate at the top and bottom. And what that allows is, through small chop, you have this softer spring rate in the top. As they collapse on top of each other, it does get a little bit stiffer. And that allows you to still have, you know, from what they say, still have plush, soft suspension going over the small stuff. But as you get into compressing your shock further, those collapse and then get into the stiffer spring rate. And as you can see, that is a lot stiffer. And obviously I'm comparing a Max to a Sledge, but I can do a comparison of that. Just wanted to show you while I have these out. So supposedly you get the best of both worlds. Soft through the small braking bumps and whatnot. And then anytime you're jumping, you get that stiff spring rate to help with bottoming out. So we will go ahead and get started on one of these, and then after we do one showing you how to take it apart, we will do a time lapse. So I'll go ahead and set the overhead camera up and get started. Okay, so you're going to start by removing the screw on your control arm to release the bottom of the shock, and that is going to be a 2.5 millimeter. So at this point, your shock should pull out. If there's anything else holding it in there. Looks like it's just going to take a little bit of force with those ball joints in there. Alright, almost out. So it is a tight squeeze in there. So as you can see at this point, you have your retainer, bottom retainer. So you're going to take a 2 millimeter that will allow you to pull the collar off. And remove your spring. So now that we have a Sledge spring off, we'll do a look. So as you can see, standard coiling throughout, tighter coiling at the top with the soft spring rate. As it compresses, gets firmer, and applying equal force, you could completely collapse this one, and you can't do it with that one. So there's a side-by-side on the sledges. Go ahead and get that put on, and you will get your collar back on. Put that 2mm screw back in. Get it put back into the control arm. And at this point, if you wanted to adjust where you have your shock located in the control arm, you could do that, move it to the other position to give you a little more height. I'm going to go ahead and put it back in the same spot. And it is a really tight fit to get them into these control arms, which isn't a bad thing. It just means you got a thick control arm. So you have to do a little bit of prying to get it in there. It's just hard with the ball joints to get them to line up to want to go in there straight. Apologize, guys. It's just a really tight fit to get it in there. Try to get the ball joints in there as straight as you can to shove it down in. Okay. Let's see if we can get the screw back through. try to go in with a 1.5 millimeter possibly to get it to straighten up. Thread it in and see if it'll straighten that ball joint out itself. Yeah, I can feel it starting to do its thing. Alright, so we got that one installed. You're going to want to most likely adjust your tension retainers to allow you to have that plush spring rate through. I'll have to play around with that to see what's best, but just give you a suspension cycle of that compared to this. So you do feel a little bit softer at the top of the shock movement. You do get that firmness. You might have to play around with possibly moving it into the second hole, possibly moving the top around to get you further into that dampening cycle. But we will give these progressives a try, and if we don't like them, go ahead and order up a set of Traxxas springs and go from there. Alright, so I will time lapse the rest of it here. Okay, so we got the springs installed. They were a pain to do. It is hard to get the bottom shock eyelet into the control arm. So even sacrificed the tip of my 1.5 millimeter trying to get it through the hole to straighten out the eyelet. Be careful with that, depending on what you're using to pry on this thing, but it is going to take some force to get them in there. So just right off the bat, I mean, I feel like just from the hand test, it seems a lot more plush just in general movement, and does get stiffer as you go down. And drop test, you know, only a couple inches, but it definitely isn't bottoming out. You're gonna have to mess with, I backed my retainers off just to give me some of that initial spring rate. You're gonna have to play around with that to decide what works best for you. If you need to move shock positioning to give you more of the dampening effect you're looking at or looking for. So I don't know, we'll try out these progressive rates, see how I like them, and see if that's the route we want to go on future trucks. But we will get this thing out and do a test run, see how it does on the jumps, And as always, please like, comment, subscribe. Next, we should have a first run on the UDR with that rear diff. Waiting on some parts to fix the Revo 2.0 and some 20 million diff fluid. So this thing, I've been having some ballooning issues. One of my subscribers was nice enough to throw a comment in and said throw some more diff fluid in the center diff. So we're going to start with that. I may do the front and rear at the same time, throw some 100,000 weight in those just to help with the ballooning and probably just a general service since I picked this truck up used anyways. But thank you guys.